Some people think marriage is about finding your soulmate, but I learned it's really about finding someone who won't completely destroy your life when things get messy. I'm Haven, I'm 40, and 3 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. My boutique was my baby, my independence, my proof that I wasn't just some architect's wife sitting around waiting for him to come home and lecture me about structural integrity, or whatever the hell Holden obsessed over all day. Anyway, make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy my stories, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. Look, I need to be real with you about something that happened. Between us, I made some choices that, well, let's just say they didn't work out the way I planned. But before you judge me, you need to understand what I was dealing with. Holden isn't some sweet, supportive husband like everyone thinks. He's this controlling, rigid man who treats everything like a blueprint that has to be followed exactly. God forbid you deviate from his precious plans. My boutique had been struggling for over a year, but I wasn't about to give Holden the satisfaction of being right. He'd questioned my business model from day one always, with that condescending tone like he was explaining basic math to a child. Haven, are you sure about these numbers? Haven, maybe you should reconsider this supplier. It was exhausting being married to someone who thought he was smarter than everyone else just because he could design buildings. So when the bills started piling up and the credit cards maxed out, I handled it myself. I wasn't going to crawl to my husband and admit he'd been right all along. I met Christian at this business networking thing downtown. Finally, someone who actually understood entrepreneurship instead of just moving numbers around on spreadsheets all day. Christian was everything Holden wasn't: spontaneous, encouraging, actually attractive. When Holden came home, he'd grunt hello and disappear into his home office. When Christian looked at me, I felt like a woman again instead of some business partner he was stuck managing. The affair started naturally. Christian made me feel appreciated, desired, like I was worth taking risks for. Meanwhile, Holden was home calculating square footage and complaining about permit delays. I mean, which would you choose? Christian understood my vision for the boutique. He believed in me. And when I mentioned my cash flow problems, he didn't lecture me about fiscal responsibility like some boring accountant. He offered to help. $50,000. That's what Christian loaned me. No questions asked, no condescending speeches about business plans. Just pure faith in my abilities. The terms were reasonable. Well, they seemed reasonable at the time. I figured I'd turn things around in a few months, pay him back, and Holden would never know how close we'd come to losing everything. I was protecting my marriage, really. Saving us both from his inevitable "I told you so" speech. But retail is brutal, and even with Christian's money, I couldn't stop the bleeding. When I missed the first payment, he was understanding. When I missed the second, he suggested we make the loan more official. Use the house as collateral, just a formality to protect us both. I knew Holden would freak out. He's obsessive about that house since he designed it himself. But I also knew this was temporary. Once the boutique took off, I'd pay everything back, and he'd never have to know. The thing is, Christian knew this notary Brooklyn, who could handle the paperwork quickly and discreetly. We met at this coffee shop downtown, and Brooklyn barely looked up from her phone while I signed everything, including Holden's signature. Look before you get all judgmental, I was saving our marriage. Holden's signature on that document was just buying me time to fix everything. I wasn't stealing from him. I was protecting him from stress he didn't need to deal with. For months, I kept everything together. I was juggling the boutique, the payments to Christian, and keeping Holden clueless about how bad things had gotten. It was exhausting, but I was handling it. I was being the strong, independent woman he claimed to want, taking care of business, while he played with his precious blueprints. But Christian started getting pushy about payments, and I could feel everything unraveling. The pressure was incredible. I was barely sleeping, snapping at customers, making mistakes with inventory. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to tell Holden something, though obviously not everything. I figured I'd ease him into it, let him know about the loan, but maybe not mention Christian or the house situation right away. We were cleaning up after dinner on this Tuesday night, and I just stood there staring at the wall trying to find the right words. Holden was doing his usual routine washing dishes with that methodical precision he brings to everything. I finally just blurted it out, that I'd had an affair and borrowed money. I expected him to explode, to yell, to demand details. Instead, he just turned off the water and said he was listening. So I told him about Christian, about the loan, about forging his signature on the house paperwork. I was crying, trying to explain how desperate I'd been, how I was just trying to save us both from financial ruin. I waited for him to comfort me, to tell me we'd figure it out together like married couples do. Instead, he looked at me with this cold, calculating expression and said, "That's a problem." Then he walked to the spare bedroom and shut the door. That's it. No discussion, no problem solving, no partnership, just clinical assessment and abandonment. I spent the whole night on the couch expecting him to come out and actually talk to me like a husband should. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. I figured he needed space to process, but when the police showed up that afternoon to arrest me, I couldn't believe it. My own husband had turned me in, like I was some criminal, instead of his wife, who'd made a mistake trying to save our family's finances. The humiliation was unbearable. Neighbors watching as they put me in handcuffs, like I was some common thief, instead of a woman who'd been trying to protect her marriage. My parents had to drain a huge chunk of their retirement to bail me out and hire Nathan, my lawyer. The disappointment in their voices was crushing, but what really hurt was how they kept asking why Holden wouldn't just handle this privately. A real husband would protect his wife, my father said, and he was right. Instead of working together to fix this mess, Holden had thrown me to the wolves. Nathan tried to build a defense around how Holden's controlling behavior had driven me to desperate measures. It was true. His constant questioning of my business decisions, his refusal to just trust my judgment, his obsession with financial details instead of supporting my dreams. I'd felt suffocated in that marriage, like I couldn't breathe, without him analyzing every decision I made. But Holden's lawyer, Carter, was vicious. They painted me as some master manipulator instead of a struggling businesswoman who'd made poor choices under pressure. During depositions, Carter grilled me for hours about every purchase, every decision, every moment of our marriage. He made it sound like I'd planned this whole thing instead of just trying to survive. The worst part was how Holden sat there during those depositions, stone-faced and silent. No emotion, no recognition of what we'd built together over 15 years. He turned into this stranger who analyzed our entire relationship like it was just another building project that had failed inspection. Meanwhile, Christian was getting nastier. Anonymous emails to Holden's firm, weird texts about home security systems, subtle threats wrapped in helpful suggestions. I was terrified, but when I tried to talk to Holden about it, his lawyer told me all communication had to go through them. My own husband wouldn't even take my calls when someone was threatening us. The legal bills were destroying my parents' retirement savings, and everyone kept blaming me for not just accepting whatever Holden offered in the divorce. But why should I walk away with nothing when I'd spent 15 years building a life with this man? I deserve something. For all those years of putting up with his rigid, controlling personality. The real betrayal came when Carter subpoenaed all our financial records. They found every receipt, every transaction, every detail of how I'd been managing the boutique's expenses. Suddenly, my business dinners with Christian looked suspicious. My clothing purchases for maintaining a professional appearance seemed excessive. Everything I had done to keep the boutique running was twisted into evidence of deception. That's when I finally understood that Holden had never really known me at all. He saw those receipts and assumed the worst instead of recognizing how hard I'd been working to save our future. A spa day became frivolous spending. A nice dinner became evidence of an affair. He couldn't see that I'd been fighting for us while he sat in his office drawing lines on paper. During the settlement conference, I completely broke down. I begged him to just give me enough from the house sale to start over somewhere else. After 15 years together, didn't I deserve at least that much? But he sat there like a statue, unmoved by my tears, unwilling to show even basic compassion for the woman who'd shared his bed for over a decade. Give me something, I pleaded with him in the hallway. You owe me that much. But he just pulled away from me like I was diseased and walked back into that conference room. That's when I knew the man I'd married was gone, replaced by this cold stranger who cared more about winning than about what we'd meant to each other. Christian's trial was a circus. They painted him as this predatory lender who targeted desperate women, but I knew better. He genuinely cared about me, had seen potential in my business, when my own husband couldn't be bothered to offer real support. Yes, he'd made threats when things went bad, but that was just business. The personal stuff we'd shared was real, even if it ended badly. I took the plea deal. 5 years probation and community service. A felony record that would follow me forever, all because I tried to save a marriage to a man who'd rather destroy me than work together to solve our problems. Holden got to keep the house, his career, his reputation. I got to start over with nothing, branded as a criminal for life. The divorce settlement was brutal. $15,000. That's what 15 years of marriage was worth to him. I had to take it because Nathan said fighting would cost more than I'd ever win. So I wrote my final email to Holden, telling him exactly what I thought about his betrayal, his selfishness, his complete failure as a husband when I'd needed him most. 2 years later, I'm working retail and living with my parents. My credit is destroyed, my business dreams are dead, and I'm still paying for lawyers while Holden gets to play the victim. He's thriving in his career, probably telling everyone how he heroically escaped his criminal wife. Meanwhile, I'm dealing with the real consequences of trying to save a marriage that was already over. The truth is, I married a weak man who couldn't handle a real crisis. When I needed strength, partnership, and loyalty, he gave me lawyers and police reports. When I needed a husband who would fight for our future together, he chose to protect himself instead. I may have made mistakes, but at least I was willing to take risks for us. He just ran away the moment things got complicated. I don't regret trying to save my business or fighting for something I believed in. I regret wasting 15 years on a man who wasn't strong enough to stand by me when it mattered. That's the real crime here, not the loan or the paperwork, but marrying someone who'd abandon you the second you needed them most.